Hello, everyone. I'm Tracy Derwin, and I'm here with Shane Buell, and we have a very special guest, Captain Matt Dakin. He has 30 years experience as a fire captain fighting fires. And today he's going to go over some of the fire damage that we've been seeing over the past years. And he's also going to share what he is doing about it, since there's very little we can do, with these unnatural fires. And a lot of people ask, we know this is happening, so what would we do, meanwhile? So thank you, Captain Matt, for joining us and lending your expertise today.
Thank you, Tracy and Shane. I appreciate the opportunity to speak here. Just a quick background. I did 33 total years in the fire service. The last 30 were in the Bay Area, in the San Francisco Bay Area. And I've been on a lot of fires all throughout the state through my career on strike teams working with CAL FIRE on a lot of the big incidents. And it wasn't until the Tubbs fire when I realized that something was off, because it was off the charts, the magnitude and the amount of fires compared to anything I had ever seen. That night, just in the surrounding counties around me, and I'm in Sonoma County, there were over 70 fires, and I was listening to them all night on my radio. I have a radio I have all the local emergency agencies programmed in where I can listen. And I was listening, and as I was watching the Tubbs fire go from Calistoga over to Santa Rosa, crossing a highway 101 and burning down a fully sprinklered Kmart building, and just, it was unbelievable. And listening on the radio as people were trapped up at Clear Lake and they were having to use boats to rescue people, and just on and on and on what was going on. It was over the top, so different than anything I'd ever experienced. I experienced over the years, a lot of wind events where it's real windy. We've never had that many fires. So that was when I first realized that something wasn't right. And then when we started looking into hearing the stories and looking into the burn patterns and how things burn, that's when we knew. I did some videos with my friend John Lord about the fires and what we saw, the complete destruction all the way down to burning out. Usually in a fire, when a fire burns, in a house fire, you can go through after the house is burned and you can usually tell, oh, this was the kitchen, this was the bathroom, because the shells of the appliances are still there, the toilet's still there, the tub's still there, because they don't burn. But, in the Tubbs fire, there was nothing.
I'm curious, did you share these concerns with your fellow firefighters, and what kind of reaction did you get? What was the talk?
So there were a few that I think could see that something wasn't right, but most people were oblivious. Most people were just going along with, that's climate change. Oh my God, climate change is so bad. So most people buy the narrative. And I had already gone down a lot of other rabbit holes. I have a love for the truth and and so they already kind of looked at me as kind of maybe a nut or whatever. Been complaining for years about the spraying, about the chemtrails, and which I know that's not the geoengineering, solar radiation management, but the slang term is chemtrails, and I couldn't get many of them to even look up. They just think that's nutty. They just think it's contrary. Yeah. So I already kind of had that reputation, and when you know that it's just going to make you stand out more of a nut, you kind of pick and choose who you're even going to share the information with. But most people were clueless. I hate to say it.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping things have changed significantly.
I think they have. There's so much that has come out. So much has come out. So much of the corruption in so many ways. And once you realize that, the government is all either doing or allowing this to happen over here, then you get a new set of eyes for everything else. And that's what happened with me when I first learned about the Federal Reserve and how things really work, how monetary system really works. 25 years ago, it gave me a new set of eyes to see everything else. And I started going down a lot of deep rabbit holes.
Yeah. Shane, you want to show some of the images that we You got
Yes, but before I do, I just want to say that your interview with Shelley and John Lord was actually one of the early influences on my understanding of fire behavior. And so I really appreciated that. And we will link that in the description as well. All right.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. It really opened my eyes and really got me looking at stuff. And that was within, what, a month or two of the Paradise Fire?
Yeah, the Paradise Fires were in 2018, so that was a year later after the Tubbs fire, and that's when I went with my friend John Lord, and who's since passed, as well as Jamie Lee from A Plain Truth, who's also since passed. And we actually brought Deborah Tavares and her husband Lou up there with us. If you know who she is, she has StopTheCrime.net. We also brought her up there.
We do.
So we had a lot of eyes on that looking, and John and I went up for several days and took a lot of photos. And yeah, it was very eye opening what we saw. And I have a list of things that we saw that were just not normal.
Yeah, and I did actually grab some images from that interview with Shelley, and I'm gonna go ahead and show some of these now and have you like tell us what was anomalous about these.
Yeah, no, this is one of my favorite pictures right here. This was a tree, and I know Robert could probably tell you by looking at it what type of tree it was. But as you can see, there's no other vegetation around it. That is a blacktop school, a school blacktop area. You got your bike rack in the back there, and this tree was burned from the inside out, and it looks now like a barbecue pit. And that's just not how things burn. I mean, the inside is the most protected. If you burn a log in your fireplace, they burn from the outside in. Everything burns from the outside in, unless you're using a microwave, and microwaves heat up from the inside out. So, so this is what we noticed with all over up there in Paradise, was how the burning of the trees were from the inside out. And usually they start to burn because of the radiant heat from something that's hot next to them. The tree next to them is burning, and the heat from that catches these, or an ember comes and starts, and embers come and catch the leaves on fire. I mean, we saw tree after tree, bush after bush. I have manzanita bushes that were burned just like that, where they were burned at the base completely. Yeah, that one right there, that's a great one. Burned completely at the base and creating tunnel systems, but you can see none of the leaves burned. So the hardest part to burn, the thickest part, is burned all the way through, but the leaves aren't burnt, which should burn the easiest. And I was there with this manzanita bush. I know exactly where it was, and there was a fence right near here too, and the fence posts were only burned where the wire or the nails were attached to it. So we started seeing the patterns of anything metallic that was touching metal, that's where it burned. And then all the trees where they were burning more underground than they were on top of the ground. Now fire, heat goes up. So, and not down. So these tunnel systems down in the ground should be the hardest to get lit. That's usually the safest place, down low in the fire. And this is where the most intense fire was. And Robert will tell you that the type of trees that he was finding were the most damaged were the water lovers, or the ones that were in the creeks. So yeah, that was tree after tree after tree that we saw where they were burned from the inside out, just like a microwave cooks. And that's the destruction that we saw. I use the analogy: if you took a pile of bark and put it in a microwave versus a pile of nails and put it in a microwave, the nails are going to they're going to have a much bigger reaction than the tan bark. So yes, they're perfect. Those are all great. I've got those same bins. Those are great ones. That's what we saw right there, and that defies how things should norm. And if it was just one tree and everything else is burning normally, then it would be like, okay, something weird happened here to cause this. But this was tree after tree after tree. The other thing was, PG&E. There was a ton of PG&E that was resources that were staged there prior to the Paradise Fire. So And that, and the multiple sources say that was up, I think, on Skyline Boulevard. There was this huge PG&E, so it's kind of coincidental. And
And
then
the power lines were the blame, correct?
I believe
That's
so. Yeah,
said.
power lines or power. Yeah, yeah. It was burned over from like McGilly, I think, over that way, and came over.
Okay. Then do you know why these meters burn? I see this all the time.
So this isn't just here in Paradise. This is all over. Whether it's deliberate or not, I don't know. But it's a best case scenario. It's just a flaw in the meters. That's best case scenario, because there's been, from the time they started putting them in, there's been problems with these meters being a cause of fires. And so there was another one up there at the same, I think it might have been at Pearson Elementary School, part of the school that didn't burn. There was another meter in the hallway, covered hallway, which was still there, that, you know how you go hallways like between buildings and there's a roof over your head, or a ceiling over your head. So, and the meter there was melted. So there was no fire damage around it, but the meter was melted. So that was.
How far away from a actual fire damage would you say that was?
Oh, hundreds and hundreds of feet.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they're part of the problem. Whether they're part of the weapon system, whatever you want to call it. Smart meters are complicit in these fires, and to some extent, for sure.
All right.
I do believe that could be the induction phenomenon that is causing, current, eddy currents to flow through the wires and overload these smart meters like that.
Yeah, and that may be, it may be an innocent thing, it may be whatever, but they're for sure part of the problem. I mean, before the fires ever happened, when they first started putting them in, there were fires that were going on because of the smart meters. So I was kind of following them. So
okay. And Shane, you want me to show the glass, maybe?
Oh, yeah. That's the other thing, is the temperatures. The temperatures of these fires, in order to, they make no sense. It's kind of like the fire in Maui. It makes no sense of the complete destruction with nothing feeding it, with no fuel around it to feed it. Yes, exactly. Boy, you're on it. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I've seen them out in parking lots with nothing around. And, the other thing we saw a lot of was like the barrier guardrails. There's either 6x6 or 8x8s. I think they're like 8x8s or 10x10 posts coming up, and they're burned, but they're burned at the bolts. Yeah. So now a lot of the stuff they're replacing all metal.
Yeah, they're doing that around my house.
And one of the interesting things when we were driving around up there in the aftermath of Paradise, one of the things they were doing, they had the road blocked, and they said they were replacing a culvert. Now, why would you need to replace a culvert unless the fire did something to the culvert, and the metal culvert that,
Robert had told us about the same thing happening as well. And I do think that, actually, so this is an example of the underground utility lines. You can see the panels that are blackened on the sidewalk, and it looks like there was an underground fire.
Yep. It does. They won't burn the way I saw these cars burn. They wouldn't do that. And if one burned, there was a car 10 feet away, it's not necessarily going to burn because of this. And this is what we saw. We saw car after car burning with a plastic garbage can right next to it, not burning. Yeah, and that's exactly what we saw. That truck, there's nothing left except metal on that truck, basically. But so everything that wasn't metal or was touching metal is gone, but the plastic garbage can sitting there just fine, because things that were attached to metal seem to burn if they were attached to the metal. Why did they get going like that? Why did they burn? Why did they burn when the plastic garbage can right next to it didn't burn? So it's how did they get going and burning in the first place? This would be my question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you want to show these other ones, Shane?
Yeah. So one thing that was clear to us, there was some sort of grounding Metal, there was a grounding effect, like lightning, wants to go to ground. And I think with the cars, there's a lot of metal there. And then maybe it lit the fire trying to ground metal to the ground, maybe got the tires going. And that's what got the cars going. I don't know, but there was definitely a whole grounding effect. And then anything touching the metal, and especially if the metal was trying to get to ground. So why did that happen? But I think it has to do with what we're seeing with the grounding effect. And I think that has to do with going to the trees with more water. They were burned the most from the inside out. So I think it was a technology that wanted to go to ground. And if it's hitting these cars, I don't know if they were targeted, the cars were targeted or whatever, but it was just super probably heating anything between them and the ground and maybe getting tires going. I don't know. But every time we saw with the steel belted radials, the tires were gone. But we saw a lot of tires without the steel belted radials that were still fine. So the metal definitely played a big factor. I mean, when you have tire after tire after tire with the steel belts and the tires are gone, but then you have the tire that's just the rubber tire still there. So the metal definitely was a factor. The metal that shouldn't burn created the cause of the burning.
Yeah, I happen to know that when microwaves strike metals, they cause eddy currents within the metals that will seek ground. And if they don't reach ground, I'm sure you're going to end up with perhaps an overload situation.
Yeah, and that makes sense. Just heating up. So that's what it looks like. That's what it looked like happened.
And then Shane, do you want me to show the house?
Sure, actually. So you had mentioned before examples of differences between the Tubbs fire and the Paradise campfire. One of which was that there was like almost no shells of appliances left, as well as like tubs or sinks or anything like that. And this house almost looks like it imploded inward, like as if it had burned from the inside out. I want to get your opinion on that.
100%. That was one of the things that we noticed, that typically when houses burn, they tend to fall outward. But this, if the house is burning more from the inside out, the structural components on the inside are burning, that would, an inward collapse would make sense. And that's what it looks like here. Everything collapsed inwards because there's nothing out. I mean, that was something that we noticed, that they were collapsing inward on themselves. So good point. Plastic igloos, and plastic was the safest, being in a plastic igloo, or like a plastic dog house, would have been your best bet during or in a tree. I mean, it's crazy. Heat goes up, and there's a trailer park, and they're on these I-beams, and the I-beams were melted, and they're 2 feet off the ground or whatever, and they were completely melted.
What's an I-beam? I'm not
heavy metal. It's
that holds it up.
Heavy metal construction, like almost like railroad tracks. I mean, they're really heavy duty construction metal, and they were melted. So it takes a ton of heat to melt those. And this is what the trailers were sitting on at a trailer park. So, but I think, we pretty much covered everything else. So, so I'd like to talk about, and as I were mentioning before the show, that, we know these aren't natural. We know they've been controlling the weather. There's patents that you can look up. Dane Wigington has a site,
geoengineeringwatch.com. We've actually interviewed him as well.
Okay, great. Yeah, and on his site, you can go at the top of the page, you look at patents, and you can see like a couple hundred patents from back in the late 1800s when they start. So, and when John and I were looking at the fire, the Paradise fire, we're trying to shake out what could have caused this. We started looking up directed energy weapons. Then it's like, oh my God, it would explain everything. There's so many different types of technologies that would explain all this. But the scarier part was there was actually more technology on mind control with the directed energy weapons than even doing the damage that we're seeing here. So, we've seen it with the floods, and always blamed on climate change. And so ultimately, this is our public servants or our government that's allowing or doing it or allowing it to happen. And so I've been going down the road for quite a while now on what we can do about it. How do we take back our power? Because, the Declaration of Independence, the second paragraph, I'll just read it real quick. It says, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just power from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. I mean, this is a founding document that's stating this. Okay, so we went from that and we the people created the government and created a constitution to secure our rights. Now, people think the Constitution, we always hear about constitutional rights. That's a misnomer. There are no constitutional rights unless you're a 14th Amendment U.S. citizen. The Constitution does not give us rights. It secures our inalienable rights given to us by our Creator. But most people have been tricked, and most people have been tricked. So most people are walking around as United States citizens. And that was the U.S. citizen was created in 1868 after the Civil War. And if you're a U.S. citizen, which most people just think it means being an American, and most good people have, and they've said it all their lives on all their forms and everything, that's actually a federal citizen. A U.S. citizen is a federal citizen. Now, the federal government is supposed to have limited jurisdiction. If you look up Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 of the U.S. Constitution, it says that the Congress's limited jurisdiction is a 10-mile square area. That's it. But they've done this federal overlay to try and 10-mile square area plus areas ceded by the states for forts, dockyards, post offices, things like that. That's it. That is their jurisdiction. That's the Congress's jurisdiction. But they've done this federal overlay in all the states, and they've gotten us to claim to be federal citizen, to be U.S. citizens. Everything is contractual, and all contracts are voluntary. So we all have the right to self-determination. We created the government. We created the Constitution in order to secure our rights, and the Constitution is rules for them to follow. Doesn't govern us, but when you're a 14th Amendment U.S. citizen, now you have to follow. Now Congress created it, so now you're under Congress as a 14th Amendment U.S. citizen, and now you have to follow every code, statute, regulation that they put out because you claim to be that. So I'm trying to get people to understand how to become one of the people with inalienable rights given to us by our Creator, and documents that they can see that'll show everything I'm saying. And I've just got some right here that I'll just read real quick. In Title 28, 300215A, you look up it's the definitions. It says United States means a federal corporation, because it is. They created a corporation and they named it United States. And if you look up under the Uniform Commercial Code 9-307H, it says the United States is located in the District of Columbia. So they created a corporation, they called it the United States, and it's located in DC. And they got everybody to claim to be a US citizen. So the de jure 50 states still exist. The United States of America still exists. But we don't understand, most people don't understand that they got two things going on at once, and they're constantly getting us to claim to be this subservient status as US citizens. So does this make sense so far?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know how much of this you're aware of or whatever. I don't want to go too fast.
It's new to me, but I'm kind of following. I have it pulled up here. So basically, U.S. Secretary of State is kind of the gatekeeper for citizenship evidence. They're the department that issues passports. So by sending an affidavit to this U.S. Secretary of State of your decision to be a national with inalienable rights given to you by your Creator and not a 14th Amendment U.S. citizen, then you send a notarized affidavit stating that, then
that gets you out of their system because it is all voluntary, but it's all been deceptive, but it's all voluntary. So that's how we get out of it. And then we have to, and then just continue to learn all the other adhesion contracts that they've got us into with our driver's license and Social Security, all these different things. So it's learning the rules of the game. If I have a Black's Law dictionary, and when you look up the word person, it says a person is a corporation, as that term is used in the first clause of the 14th Amendment. And the 14th Amendment says all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and the state wherein they reside. So that's the 14th Amendment. And in my Black's Law dictionary that I have right behind me, it says corporations or quote persons, is that word is used in the first clause of the 14th Amendment. So everything is commerce now. They have commercialized everything. We are just entities. That's why when you're dealing with the government, they're always dealing with us as an entity in an all capital letter name. I'm either Matthew William Dakin, all capital letters. I'm Matthew W. Dakin. I'm Matthew Dakin. That's always all capital. And they're actually securities that they create. And this all started. It really started in the 30s through the birth certificate. In 1933, the corporation went bankrupt, and they started using the birth certificates after that. And it's basically, we are the creditors, we the people. So they've made it all legal, lawful. Everything is run based on our credit, based on our signature. But they're keeping it from us to actually be the true creditors, and they're switching us and making us the surety for all the debt of the nation. That's what is going on. And that started after the bankruptcy in 1933 through the birth certificate. Basically, the government is here to serve us, and they have become quite tyrannical. You can see what's going on. Whether they're just being a tool for the globalists or whatever the reason, doesn't matter. They're allowing this to go on. They're allowing us to be sprayed like bugs. They're weaponizing the weather against the people. And so we're not being protected. They're not serving us like they're supposed to be. And they're acting as if they're the master. We, the people, are funding it all. We're funding our own enslavement. We're funding our own demise. There's no fighting involved. We have to starve, stop feeding the beast, is what I call it. And we do that by withdrawing our consent, with the consent of the governed, right? In the Declaration of Independence. The Internal Revenue Service is 100% voluntary, unless you're a federal citizen or you live in DC, which very few do out of the population. And there's a couple other things, certain corporate gains, because everything is done out of DC, basically. So Internal Revenue Service is the first place to go to. You look up there, the definition, United States includes the states and the District of Columbia. Okay, that's right in the 26 CFR. The Code of Federal Regulations, that's for the Internal Revenue Code. State shall be construed to include the District of Columbia. I mean, that's it. So they only have jurisdiction over the District of Columbia. That's all the Internal Revenue Service does. But when you claim to be a U.S. citizen, where's the United States located? In the District of Columbia. Not the United States of America. Completely different. They have no jurisdiction over the 50 several states of the Union, which all still exist.
Yeah, I'm seeing there's a movement to not pay property tax because it's technically like you don't have to pay property tax. And I know there's this guy that he went to court. I forgot what state it was, but he was telling him why he doesn't have to pay his property tax. And then they actually handcuffed him, and I think they detained him for a while.
So you have to know what you're doing when you're doing this. If you're still a slave on the plantation, which if you're a U.S. citizen, you pretty much are a slave on the plantation, then you have to get emancipated first. You have to go stop being a slave on the plantation, go contact the Secretary of State and get proof, and then send that proof out and to the local agencies. Say, hey, this is who I am. This is my status. You're no longer a U.S. citizen. You're a national of the United States of America. So that's the first thing you want to do before you want to start doing any of this stuff, because literally slaves on the plantation have no rights. And so
if you go through this and you're not paying your property tax and you get asked, or you start getting kicked out of your place, does the system understand all of this?
No, most government workers,
They have no idea.
they've normalized all this. So it's just people, it's normal thinking that we're all supposed to pay. And certain businesses are supposed to pay property taxes, but we have a right to own property. You cannot tax a right. We have a right, we have to exist somewhere. So that's really an existence tax. The Homestead Act was to exempt, because back in the day, most people made their living on their ranch, on their house, with whatever they were doing there. So they exempted the part that was for raising the family in their home, because that's never been taxable. They play these word games. Residential actually is a commercial term. So if your house is just for your family and you're not running a business out of your house, even if you are running a business, the part that should be taxed is only the part where you're running your business, the office, your home office, whatever. That part of your house that's just for raising your family and having fun and living life, it should not be taxed. It's not taxable by the law. And every state is a 2-letter digit because it's all federal. So when you use that as your address, the 2-digit, that's a federal address, and the zip code is the zone improvement program, that's a federal area. So they've been very clever of extending this federal zone over everything. But again, once you understand it, you can get out of it. Again, back to Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, Congress has limited jurisdiction in the 10-mile square area or other areas ceded by the states. And they also have jurisdiction over their subjects. If you're a U.S. citizen, you're one of their subjects. But if you have written your letter to the Secretary of State, you no longer choose to be a federal citizen, you want to be a state citizen of your de jure state, and you break all those ties, you're not living in a federal zone, if you're still receiving mail, you're putting brackets around your zip code because that takes it off the page, and you're not using the 2-letter state abbreviation, then you can separate yourself from the federal government that way. So that's what has to be done. That's how we have to get back to we the people. Otherwise, they're just going to continue gaining more and more power and enslaving us. We have to do that.
So if you do all these processes, you get the notarized and everything, and you really study this and understand, it will work. It will get you out of your taxes and the property tax.
IRS is the easiest one. Internal Revenue Service is the easiest one. So I've been dealing with property taxes for over 5 years now, and I'm still dealing with it. And we're going to see. I mean, I'm willing to go all the way, whatever that means. But they're still sending in multiple ways. I'm challenging their authority in multiple ways, and they're ignoring everything. I've given them notice of inquiries and explained this, and I've brought my land patent forward and explaining when did this land patent that said it was to this person to heirs and assigned forever, when did that get nullified, or when did that not, is that still valid or not, and if not, when wasn't it valid? Because I'm the current assigned, I've proven it, I've brought it forward, I've done all the things, and they're mute. They won't. And they've, again, everything is commercial. So they won't even send it in my name. My name on the deed is in its proper form, but they send it as these entities. So they can't deal with live men and women. So the government can only deal with entities. When you answer something from the government in that all capital letter name and you don't challenge that, then what you've done is you've created joinder with that entity. Now you basically claim to be that entity. So that's the first step, is understanding that. I actually did a name change in the court system, Superior Court, in 2020, changing all those entities into my proper name. And they can't deal with that proper name. They can't deal with a living man. So they still send it to these entities, and I have proof. Hey, that's not me. That's not me. If it's
me, I mean, even doing something like that, like changing your name, or
I just changed it to its proper form in their system. I didn't really, but again, their system, my name is only Matthew William Dakin, not all caps.
It's not easy. It's not easy. You have to have certain reasons for it. I don't know. I remember I was getting my passport, and she's like, "You can't get a passport because your name is different." I'm like, "Here's my marriage license and everything." No, you got to change it with the court. And I'm like, just put it through. I mean, I don't even know what the rule is, but it just seems like there's these things that the people that enforce these don't even understand.
That's for sure. That most of the government workers at the lower levels do not understand this. You know, the
Yeah.
state attorney general does, the and the U.S. attorney general and secretary of state, they understand this, but they, you know, they're going to do everything they can to keep people as subjects in that inferior status. It's just much easier because then they have control.
If you want to start this process, you know, if you could just start once, you know, one, you know, you don't want to go after everything. If you can go after one topic like property tax, maybe I could start
tax would be the last thing I would go after.
That's the last.
That's the last one I got. It's going to be the hardest one. So the
Okay.
easiest one is like the Internal Revenue Service. That's actually the easiest.
Federal taxes.
And the first thing though is getting your knowledge base and getting your paperwork in, doing what's called a revocation of election. You send them notice letting them know that you're revoking your election, because it is voluntary, your election to pay taxes, because you've already told them that you're a taxpayer. You've already claimed to be a taxpayer. So you've already, now you owe those taxes every year. You've claimed to be a taxpayer. You claim to live in the District of Columbia. You claim to be under their jurisdiction. So the first thing you would do, you would send a letter to the Secretary of State telling them that you're choosing to be a national with inalienable rights given to you by your creator and not a 14th Amendment U.S. citizen.
Is there a channel? I know that I've seen channels that are, that's kind of the purpose. Is there a channel that people could watch to follow along?
Yes. So there's a few different places to get the information. We the People, and then the number 2, .us. Second one is educatedinlaw.org. .org. And this third one is the one I would actually use. He's got a template there. This is the one I would use to actually look on his template to send to the Secretary of State. And this one is called the Matrix Docs, spelled DOCS.com. And that's Roger Sales.
And he has all that information.
And Roger Sales has a radio program every day. On Pacific time, it's 8 to 10. And he puts out a lot of really good information on this, especially on sending this in and sending your revocation of election. You want to look at all this, called the straw man or ens legis or nom de guerre. There's a lot of different names for these entities that they create that look like your name, that securities are behind them. And that's what's running this system. All 3 of these sites are really good. And that's what I recommend, because power is in your knowledge. You have to have paperwork to show that you've given notice, because you spent your life claiming to be something. And now you have to get it on the record that, nope, you're not being that anymore. And you need to get that on the record. But other than that, it's really about the knowledge, having the knowledge. And then it's a lot easier to challenge all this. So it's building your knowledge base. And the easiest one will be the Internal Revenue Service.
And that's everyone. That affects everyone.
That affects everybody. Yeah. And then another hard one is traffic, even though it should be easy, but you're dealing with
registration, and
you're dealing with cops on the side of the road who, a lot of them don't have a super high IQ, and they got a gun on their side, and they're trained to anybody that's doing this. They're trained. Oh, they're a sovereign citizen. You might as well call yourself a terrorist. So that's how they're trained. So it's not real safe. You just want to be careful. And there's some things you can do to make it easier, like putting your car in a trust to where you're not the driver. It's not your car. You're just using it. There's a lot of things. There's ways to make it easier on yourself.
So you're not as tied in to the system.
So they don't have, how do they demand your registration or this or that when it's not even your car? You're just borrowing it. Car belongs to the trust. You don't know. I mean, so these are all things that take time to learn how to deal with them. But ultimately, all taxes are voluntary. We're supposed to be free. The government is supposed to work for us, and it's all been turned on its head. And we need to, and if we're ever going to stop what is going on right now with the weaponization of the weather and the media and everything, then we, the people, need to take our power back. And we do that by learning what they've done and how we've actually volunteered for it all unknowingly. Unknowingly, we volunteered in through their deception, and then how we withdraw that, to stop volunteering.
Yeah.
So
I mean, the average person just doesn't have this time to learn and
right,
dedicate.
that's why if you just take an hour a day or a half hour a day and start going on these sites and start looking, and then if you have time, if you're somebody that can listen to the radio show in the morning on the matrixdocs.com from 8 to 10, and the information's right on that webpage, how to get on, it can be in the background. It'll start getting, it's like learning a foreign language, because what they've done to the language is nothing is as it seems. Like I said, you think the United States means the country. No, that means a federal corporation located in DC. U.S. citizen. No, that's a subject of that corporation.
I'm feeling that this topic has become more prevalent. I'm seeing some of the channels, people going out of their way, filming their time in court and sharing all their, their journey and getting people involved. So, more people, the stronger the movement will be.
Yeah. And just so you know, just like some of the definitions, like in the definitions in the 26 CFR, the Internal Revenue Code, once you're a national of the United States of America, once you're a national, you're no longer a U.S. citizen, you're termed a non-resident alien. So we are foreign. We're foreign to that government. I am actually a foreign national to the United States government, to DC. I'm a foreign national. So that's what we are, and that's their terms.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
All right. Well, we're going to put this information. So anyone that, wants to get started on this process, there's somewhere to go.
This is where my passion is because this is the solution. So I hope.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Matt, for all of your expertise.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak.
Absolutely. And I think that's going to do it. So thank you, everyone, for watching. And we'll see you all soon.
All right, thanks, you guys.
All right. Thanks.